In pre-World War II, Sofia, Bulgaria, a young girl dreams of a bright future. Born into a Jewish family, her life was forever changed under the shadow of the Nazis. By a twist of fate, she escaped deportation to the death camps. But survival meant enduring Stalin's regime and a life uprooted. After immigrating to a brand new Israel, she was deceived by the one she trusted most. Her journey took her to London and finally the Provence, where she rebuilt her life. A mother of two sons, one navigating the challenges of dyslexia, she persevered. This is the story of a woman who faced history's greatest trials and emerged with wisdom and grace. At age 91, she reflects on a lifetime of resilience, faith, and love. This is her story, and it's one you won't forget.
So Ginette, very special that we can be here together in your home. I read your autobiography and I was touched by your impact with the Blossoms, or what the Blossoms did for you in Sofia. You were born in Sofia in Bulgaria, and you write about these blossoms, and I started to perceive that as something of a bigger than just blossoms once in your life.
It is true. I was aware of the blossom as a very young child because I was sensitive to the beauty of the tree, the flower that blossomed and emitted such beautiful, beautiful scent. And later on, during the war, when there was no food, there was nothing, my mother, grown-ups, I was a little child, but grown-ups used to go and gather the flower of the linden tree when it was in blossom, dry it up to have over winter for drinking tea, because there was no tea, there was nothing. But that could be made into a tisane, and that's what we drank. And somewhere in my mind, unconsciously, it was it conveyed to me the fact that what grows in the ground is nourishment for people if we know how to do it. It's nourishment, and I cherish that idea. And to this day, I do love fruit trees and anything that gives nourishment to grow in the garden and use the
So they somehow brought life in the darkness of the days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I made a connection between the beauty and the usefulness of a plant, which was there, and giving generously of itself, of its beauty, of its scent, and also giving nourishment.
Getting nourishment from it.
Drink, yes, in the cold winter days.
So blossoms and the beauty of them and the life-giving power of them in the darkness. You have a unique experience. As a matter of fact, I've never read any autobiography other than yours of somebody who lived both under the Nazi regime as well as under communism. And they were two different evils with their own distinct faces, expressions, effects. Now, from a perspective of a human being, a human soul, and a family living under Jewish, living in the Holocaust days under the Nazi system, and then thereafter being liberated, coming under the communist system of Stalin. How did you experience as a young child those two systems, and how did they differ from one another?
There certainly was a difference. The Nazi system came when I was really little, and I experienced the grown-ups' fear. I felt fear, I felt danger, I felt afraid, I had nightmares, but I didn't share them with anybody. My father was taken away, all the Jewish men were taken away, and then we were deported, women and children deported from Sofia, because the German army, the Bulgaria went with the Axis, and the German army was allowed in as a passage through Bulgaria in order to attack Greece and Yugoslavia at the time. But they were there, and they didn't want Jewish people in Sofia. And so we were deported to small towns, and men were sent to forced labor. There wasn't much to eat. There was fear. There were young men dressed in, I don't know, black tops or whatever they were wearing. And they were shouting, "Kill the Jews" or "Death to the Jews." And I realized that I was one of those people called Jews who had to be killed. And there was a lot of fear, but I was still very young. That was during those 4 years of war. I grew up, and I was, if I was 5 or 6 at the beginning, I was 10 by the time the war finished and we were liberated. The men came home from the camps, and we could go back to Sofia. And then the communist regime took hold. And it didn't take hold over years, it took hold over weeks. Suddenly, there was lack of freedom for everybody, not just Jews. Everybody who had been, for instance, people who own shops, they were the enemy, they were doubt, they weren't accepted by the regime.
Private enterprise. Private enterprise is not acceptable.
We knew people who had factories, and after they came back, they went back to their factories. They started to want to manufacture, to produce. Overnight, 5 militiamen came in and said, "Out. You're out. This is not yours anymore. We're taking over. You're staying here to teach the people how to work. That's what you're going to do, to teach the people how to manufacture." You had to agree with everything the authorities were saying. You have to go to special meetings to hear lectures about Stalin and learn the history of Lenin and know the dates of the revolution, the 17 revolution in Russia, and learn the biographies of these people. You had to go out and march. We had a visit by Tito, who was then the head of Yugoslavia, and we had to go out to greet him, line the streets as if the whole people of Bulgaria was excited. It was a very cold winter day. We were freezing, snow to the knees, and we were lining the streets to wait for the car that was bringing him maybe from the station or the airport. I don't think there was anywhere from the railway station, to see the car and to shout, "Wow, Tito, viva, Tito, viva." And we had to do it, and if we didn't shout, there were girls among us who were reporting, and you would be reported that you were not enthusiastic enough, you were not showing enough enthusiasm, and then you would be shunned and punished at school because we were schoolgirls.
So there was no under the communist regime, there was no space for individual opinion, no space of for your own thinking, your own perspective, expressing any of that.
None of that at all.
None at all.
By then everybody had come back to Sofia, and Sofia had been bombed by the RAF really badly. So housing was very short. And like in the Russian regime, in what was in Russia, in a flat of 4 rooms, there were 4 families. 1 kitchen, 1 bathroom, 4 families. So I was over the age of 10 and we were given 2 rooms in a flat with 2 other families. So we were 3 families in 4 rooms. You were always afraid that somebody is listening, and you were not allowed to say anything that might counter or criticize the regime. If you say the bread isn't very good, that was really, really wrong. You could disappear. People disappeared. 2 friends of my father's disappeared from the street. They went from A to B, nobody saw them. From A, they disappeared. We never knew what happened to them.
So everybody learned to keep their opinions to themselves.
And learned. Those who learned
The hard way. Yeah.
And those who didn't ended up in concentration camps.
Yeah. Now I remember from your book that your dad disappears as well. He was put in prison. You found out where he was. You tried to make yourself visible to him, that he could see you out of the prison window. But eventually, we go a few years further now. Eventually, the state of Israel was declared as an independent state, and after many rejections, you finally got permission to leave.
Yeah.
And you went on a boat to Israel.
Yes.
And then you ended up living in a very, very young Israel.
2 years old Israel.
2 years old Israel. So now we're talking, and I, as I was preparing for this interview, I had to think about it. Now you're talking about, in a way, yet a third unusual situation, because it's a young country. There is Jewish people coming from all over the world, each bringing their own culture. There was no doubt very little organization, because it was a young nation, a starting nation. That must have brought by itself another form of chaos, so to speak. Not designed like it was designed as in Nazi, and not designed as designed in communism, but it was all, let's say, new and an experiment for everybody, including the state itself.
Yes, absolutely.
And so how did you experience that, and what sort of insecurities did that bring? What sort of fears or insecurities did that bring into your life and into your family's life?
Every experience is a personal and very, very close to family.
Of course.
I was 16 years old. I left Bulgaria against my will. I did not want to go, but it was the only way out from the impossibility of any future for my father. He was still a young man. He couldn't find any work. I knew I was not going to be accepted at university with that history. So I went with my parents. We immigrated to Israel. Once we landed there, I remember, I have an image. We got off a bus. No, initially we were put in a camp, in a quarantine camp. They wanted to filter diseases, people from different countries bringing different diseases. So they kept us 40 days in a quarantine camp. And that was a tent camp, the military camp, tents, with a structure where it was a kitchen. You could go and have your meals there, and showers on the other edge where you could go and have showers. We stayed for 40 days there, and that was a melting pot of languages, different colors, different languages, different clothes, different attitudes, and it was very, very exciting. I found that very exciting. And I made friends with a few girls from Egypt that come from Egypt because I spoke French, they spoke French, so we could communicate. And there were Iraqi, a group of Iraqi immigrants. They were Jewish Iraqi immigrants from Iraq. They spoke Arabic. I'd never heard Arabic. That's from the first time I heard Arabic. And of course, within those tents, and where the kitchen was, there was local people who spoke Hebrew.
Yeah.
And they found also some people speaking the languages of the immigrants to tell us what's what. So there was some Bulgarians, some Egyptians, some speaking Arabic. And it was very exciting. It really was very exciting. I had no thought about what's going to happen from here on in. All I knew that I had to go and learn Hebrew because this was the country and I wanted to go to university. I had to go to university. And I heard that the state offers schools to study Hebrew for new immigrants free. Only you have to find yourself near where that school was. And we didn't know anything. We didn't know anything about the geography of the place, what was what. And after 40 days, we were transported on to another camp, which was called the New Immigrants Camp, which is very similar on the open. You could go take the bus, go out, go into town, search for work, find friends, go back, stay for free. Food was free. But not very comfortable, obviously, in tents. The tents were on a ground of sand. Sand got everywhere. And my mother was not somebody who took change and new situations very easily. So she became ill. And so my first foremost worry was about her. She was sick. Being sick, she was crying, she was depressed, and my father had to find a job. He left. We were given 10 at that time Israeli pounds. So he had money to get the bus and go and work.
Ginette meets her husband, a young man of breathtaking beauty, whose eyes held both love and a fervent desire for her. She adored him completely, yet she pitied him deeply for the unbearable weight he carried from his past. The youngest of 7, born into a vibrant Jewish family in Antwerp. Their home had once been filled with laughter and love, but their world was shattered, betrayed to the Gestapo. The day they came, their voices barked orders, sharp and unrelenting. His father's eyes met his, a silent, desperate plea for him to flee. Without hesitation, he slipped away, his heart pounding as he climbed out the window into the cold, unfeeling night. He found a hiding place in the cramped darkness of a circuit board cupboard, his breath shallow, his body trembling. From there, he heard the unthinkable, the cries of his parents and siblings as they were torn from their home, their voices fading into the silence of death. Left utterly alone, he survived in hiding for years, haunted by the weight of his loss. Yet somehow, against all odds, he made his way to Israel, broken but alive. It was there he found Ginette, his light, his solace, his fragile hope to begin again. But he was a broken man, deeply broken, shattered on the inside. His once innocent soul deeply crushed by the sheer weight of his loss.
So let's how you met, and not long thereafter, I remember from the book, you two started to somewhat sneakily hang out. Your parents were not entirely in favor of it, but you were very much pursuing it. So when I listened to that very incomprehensibly painful and traumatic start of your husband's life, that our mutual acquaintance, or my friend, your acquaintance, Simon Hammelburg, also wrote about in his book, The War Never Ended, how those traumas basically to this day are carried on in Jewish families. Was it your vulnerability, your experiences of all those uncertainties, and his pain, was that a sort of a unified force that drove the two of you into each other's arms, besides, of course, the natural falling in love?
We fell in love. I think, in hindsight, for the completely different reasons. I was so willing to make it up to him. I wanted to give him security and family as if I had anything to give. But I wanted to, because I did have mentally, emotionally, personally, I did have things to give.
So you had deep emphatic compassion for him?
Yes, absolutely, completely.
No.
I think I was okay-ish girl. I think he fancied me, and he fell in love with me, very much so. And we decided to get married.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
Now, before we leave this this aspect of vulnerability, which sometimes comes to our lives because of massive external forces, but it can also come to our lives through noticing that we are different, like with a child with dyslexia that sees everybody around and learn how to read, and they, although their brain is totally fine, they are just differently wired and they can't. So that's a confusing thing, and that triggers vulnerability as well. So you, having experienced both, we come to your experience with your firstborn son, who was dyslexic. We come to that later, but so you have experienced both the vulnerability of your son, the vulnerability of your husband, and your own insecurities and etc. So what can you say to young parents, either in the context of they themselves having come into life through difficult circumstances and whatnot, and lived in difficult circumstances, and or when they become aware of their child being vulnerable, whether it be through dyslexia or anything else? What can you say to young parents about vulnerability, and what can you give them as some wise advice? You're 91 years old as I interview you.
Yes. Invariably, parents are young. They are young and they lack life experience. And they would not think that the child that they've just had, or the child is now 6 or 7 years old and he's different. They lack the experience or the willingness maybe to think there's more to this than meets the eye. My child is lovely, is intelligent, he plays, he talks, he's interesting to speak to, but he does not want to get anywhere near a book. He doesn't want to do homework. Do not think of them as being less a person. See that they have not got dyslexia. Because as opposed to any other difficulty that the child could be born with, like deafness can be discerned even as a baby, Lack of good vision can be discerned very early in life. Autism can be discerned very early in life. Not so with dyslexia. You don't know until you see that your child does not know, does not relate to a book, and does not want to go to school, and is difficult, throws tantrums because he's frustrated and he's vulnerable. And you have to look at him or her in a different way. They have something which is different and they can get help. Today, there is help. These children can be guided and taught, and the parents can be made sustained and taken through that difficulty. And dyslexic children today can achieve more than another child because they have different and very special gifts.
You left Israel and you moved to England. Why? Silence.
Nobody has ever asked me why. I can't keep you long enough to tell you the whole story.
Try to capture it in a...
My husband at the time was, we were divorced. We were divorced, and he offered me a holiday with the children in England. And I didn't want to take it because I wasn't his wife anymore. I couldn't fly Sabena for free. But he insisted, and my mother pushed me.
Sabena, the Belgium airline.
Yeah, where he worked. My mother pushed me. He's offering you this holiday. You've got to go. How can you say no? The children will enjoy it. We went. We went for 2 weeks. I had a bit of money. We stayed with friends. In that 2 weeks, my husband, ex-husband, took everything I had in the flat. The house wasn't mine. It was in his name. He was paid money for redevelopment and a lot of money for redevelopment. He emptied everything to give it back, took the money and ordered the children back and canceled my ticket.
Your return ticket?
Yeah. I canceled it.
Okay.
I had to get a job. I found a room.
So you were already divorced, and there was like a malicious finishing touch.
He wanted to get rid of me.
Like I saying literally and completely.
Yeah.
He basically exiled you.
He manufactured. He thought of everything.
He premeditatedly offered a holiday.
Their way.
Send you
got rid of everything there. I had everything. There was nothing left. He emptied it and he got the money. I worked for a few weeks, got some money, went to the bank manager and I said, I need some money. I have to go back to Israel. I had £30 maybe in the account. I need £70 to go to Israel. I need to sort things out. And he gave me an overdraft to go and sort things out. I kept my room because I wasn't sure. I didn't know of any of all this. I didn't know.
Until you came back to Israel.
I came back, I opened the door. There was newspaper was running, in photograph, in films, you see empty flats where people have gone. A newspaper flying empty. Everything gone. My parents weren't living far away. They probably knew. I don't know. So it was empty. I couldn't stay there. There was no bed to sleep in. My children were with him because he had married.
He had the children as well.
He had the children, yeah.
He had 2 boys at the time.
Yes, I had
Samuel and Rudy.
Samuel and Rudy. Oh, they were sometime with my parents as well. So I went to my parents and I said, what am I going to do? I have to go and find a job. I haven't got anywhere to live. I haven't got a job. And my mother said, and this is true, there is no room for you here. My father, being a weak man who could not really contradict his wife or put his foot down and say, she is my daughter, there is room for my daughter here, one daughter they only had. There was no room for me. My father just looked away and I had to leave.
I'm going to ask a difficult question, and this is maybe not answerable, I don't know, but I think my mind goes back to Simon Hammelburg and his book, The War Never Ended. And the purpose of that book was to describe how the Holocaust in particular, but in a way the pogroms through the centuries, but the Holocaust as an apocalyptic summit of the disaster, yeah. Has so deeply impacted Jewish life that would you say that from a compassionate perspective, then those behaviors of your husband, those behaviors of your mom, were in part also almost like beyond their control? They were so scarred on the inside.
I think that is probably true all over, all along the story. There is the background of
context.
Of the context.
Yeah.
There is in me probably as well the way I reacted. Because what I felt was, I've got to get this money from my husband and give it for my children. So I went and found the solicitor and I said to him, this has happened. My husband taken the money because the house was in his name, so he was paid this money. At the time, it was something like 30,000 Israeli lira of shekel already, I don't know. You could buy a flat with that money. So my mother said, buy a flat. If you can get this money from him, this is yours because you're the mother of these children. My husband, ex-husband, said, I will give you the money if the flat you buy will be in my name.
Nice construction. Yeah.
So I went to the solicitor and I said, get into court. I want the money put into my 2 children's name in a closed account until they're 21. At 21 in Israel, you come out of the army, they will have a good sum of money to give them a start in life.
Right.
And I went back to England. I spoke to my children. I asked them to come with me. I had nothing to offer, but I had even less to offer in Israel because I saw myself downtrodden by their father whom they loved, by their grandmother whom they loved. And I was the loser. I was a complete loser.
And they came with you?
No.
They did not go?
Not.
No.
Eventually.
Eventually. How much longer after?
Finally after the army. We came...
So they came as young adults, friends.
Yes.
So yesterday, as we were preparing and meeting for the first time face to face, we've touched on being born and raised in Bulgaria, and then on to Israel, and through very unusual ways ending up in England. But yesterday you said, with pride in your voice, I'm a Londoner.
Yes, I'm a Londoner.
Tell me about it. Why do you now so strongly identify as a Londoner? What has London done to you? What has London given you that you now so much say, like, I'm a Londoner?
For the first time in my life, after a few weeks in London, I felt security. I didn't feel vulnerable. I felt that I'm in charge of my life. London welcomed me because I didn't know many people. I knew a few people in London, but they weren't friends. I went to work. I found work in Marks and Spencer's as a sales girl, which I soon was promoted to being translator because I spoke languages, and there were many foreign people coming to shop, and I had to explain the English sizes to the continental sizes in Hebrew, in French, in Spanish. And so I was promoted. And I was very, very, very depressed is not a good word. I was destroyed inwardly, having to leave my children. I was really destroyed. So I was functioning during the day because I needed to work and be with people. But when that ended, I left the place and I started walking. And I walked almost all night around London in different places.
Doing what?
Walking, just walking.
Yeah, but what sort of work?
No, not work.
Oh, walking. Sorry, walking. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Walking.
Yeah.
And then I would end up in my room later. I would go to bed, but I didn't sleep. I got up, I prepared breakfast. I didn't eat it. I went to work. I worked, and I worked. After work, I walked. Again, walking. And I was safe. Nobody attacked me. Nobody asked me, where are you going? What are you doing here? And everywhere I went in the street, a woman at one point stopped me and said, "Oh, you must look to the other side, my dear. The traffic is on the left here." She thought I was a foreigner. I remember that because it was a gesture of empathy, of friendliness.
Yeah.
I haven't had a lot of that. I loved London, the way it's constructed, the different areas with different architecture, the very, very numerous green spaces where you could go and sit on a bench or just walk around in the park, free, with nobody to bother you or make you feel unsafe. I felt safe.
So you
67, 68.
You experienced that London, the Londoners, I should say, the society of London treated you with respect,
Yes.
with dignity,
Yes.
with humanity,
Yes.
and with belonging, and
Respect.
yeah, and and that sold your heart to them.
Yes. I realized that I had been hungering for it. I was wanting to be treated in a different way, in a human way. In Israel, I was not. Certainly not by my family, by my ex-husband. Don't want to go there. It's just not something. But I was destroyed, and I was living through a breakdown at the same time as functioning for work, because I wanted the money in order to be able to go and see my children. So I went very often.
So could you say that when I listen to you now, that there is a value in established, functioning society that if we look in today's news and in today's culture, you would be tempted to say that a lot of people, let's say, living in London today, or living in, like I flew in from Calgary, living in Calgary today, they are not fully aware of the riches that they have. Could you?
No, they're not.
No.
Well, I only experienced it and appreciated it by comparison. When you have something, you take it for granted, unless you're a thinking person, unless you understand other people and other societies, and then you compare, and then you see how lucky you are, how lucky you have been in having what you have.
Right.
I met up with English people who had never been invaded. They lived through the war. They were bombarded, but they were never invaded. They never saw an enemy soldier on their land, ever.
Yeah.
And they don't know what that is.
Exactly. Now, you love the arts. You're a very artistic lady. Let's talk briefly about your art pieces. You guided me around your garden and you have these beautiful bronze sculptures, but, well, I should say but I saw themes of emptiness, of the beautiful statue of a lady who covered her face with her hair. I saw images of darkness, a statue of crying that instantly made me think of a statue that I saw in or about Auschwitz, like crying to heaven. Your sculptures sometimes express loneliness. All of them show deep emotions and even dark emotions, and yet spending time with you is like bathing in sunshine. I don't see a shred of darkness in you. You are nothing but life, and yet there is that art.
You see, that collapse, emotional collapse that I described or talked about when I had to leave my children has never, ever, I've never gone over that. I have constructed a mantle over it in order to carry on with life, because I realized at that time that I am the parent they're going to need towards the end of their life. I don't know why and how. I knew that I had to be there for them, and I had to construct a role model for them, not to be a victim, Have a mother is a heavy weight on them, a victim. No, I had to construct the person that I really was, and a strong, loving life, happy, witty, talented, whatever person I know I could be. But the pain of having to leave them is not something that I really could get over, because I lived it alone. I didn't know there was help. If there was in those days, counseling or something. I lived through that alone. And I always know that it is there, but I don't know how to get
it out.
Yes. And I don't think even in the art I have succeeded in properly getting it out, because I have probably not properly acknowledged it to myself, how much of me emotionally was destroyed. Because my children were the aim of my life. I didn't have a dream in my life. My dream were my children.
But you touched there on something which is significant. Like you say that the arts forms even in the present a way, a channel to get the pain out, to process it. You said that you very much not want to be a victim. You do not want to embrace the victim identity, victim mentality, because you know it is destructive for yourself, destructive for your children. There's no life there. And yet you also said that when you want to fully get the pain out, you basically need to see yourself as a victim of that pain in order to acknowledge it, so that it can get out. So that is almost like opposites.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
There's no no. How do you deal with that opposite, or is that in what?
I can't see a way of dealing with it because I know that I had to do it. I don't feel guilt because I had to do it. Otherwise, I would have died. I would have died. And I would have been without mom. A young mom died. Maybe that would have been better for them than an old mom, artist and there and helping and whatever. But I don't think there is a way out, because in my philosophy of life, if there is a problem, I tend to not to worry about it, because if I can do something about it, I will do something about it. If I can't do anything about it, I'll just let it be.
Yeah.
Because I can't sit worry. Worry doesn't bring anything. There's no solution in worry. But this is, it's like a bruise. Like Samuel's death, it's a bruise that's never going to heal. And I have learned to live with those bruises. I don't think I can express them properly. Words, we have so many words. Shakespeare's given us such a language, but they don't really touch. You can't really touch the pain. You can't do it. So
it's very personal.
Yeah.
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 You mentioned Samuel and Samuel's death. We'll come to that. He died how long ago?
4 years ago, 2020.
2020. But so we're going to come back. We're going to come back to his death. But let's first start at the beginning. So you raised 2 children until they were taken from you.
Yes.
So you raised them till about what age?
13 and 16.
13 and 16. And so Samuel, your firstborn, was then 16,
Yeah.
and Rudy was 30.
Yeah.
Samuel was dyslexic. But you didn't know that in the beginning, of course. And you later constructed your husband was dyslexic as well. Can you share about how you started to become aware of the fact that Samuel was dyslexic, that your child was dyslexic?
I can't. I didn't know the word dyslexia. I didn't know that existed. I knew Samuel was a lovely child. He was playful. He slept. He loved his sleep. He liked his food. And he made things. He took anything and everything that was around and he made things. He constructed things. At some point, when he was only about 7 or 8 years old, I said, I would like to have a radio in the bathroom. I'd like to have a bath and listen to music. And before I knew it, in the upper corner of the bathroom, there was a little round box that played music. He made a microphone connected to the radio in the living room, made the wires, and gave me a microphone or whatever it is.
A speaker.
A speaker in the bathroom. He was a kid. I don't know how he did it. He was amazing.
You told me you made a bicycle one time.
He wanted a bicycle. I said, I can't buy you a bicycle. I'll buy you a car when you grow up, but I can't. Bicycle is dangerous. We lived in a road where a child had been killed on a bicycle. And he made himself a bike. He got bits and pieces. And he made himself a bike. So I didn't take it away from him because he made it so, you know.
But his schooling, his reading.
Our schooling was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. He didn't want to do homework. I was called to the school. That was maybe grade 3. I don't know how the grades go, but 3, he would have been 8 to 10 years old, 8 years old. And I was told by his teacher, I'm not happy with your son. He doesn't work. I think he's underdeveloped. He's got to go to special school for retarded children.
It's terrible. No.
I just didn't know what to say. I have a lively, intelligent, wonderful boy at home. He's not retarded. So he doesn't want to do homework. He's difficult. He ran away. And he just didn't want to. I loved him. I hugged him. And I said, well, why don't you? And he didn't say anything.
He didn't say, like, I can't figure it out.
He did not say anything to me.
So he was not able to acknowledge it to you, at least, maybe to himself.
Not even to himself.
Not even to himself.
Yeah.
And so he grew up without you or the school ever really understanding why the book world did not open up for him.
You know, recently I went to Sofia, to Bulgaria with Rudy, and I was walking around the streets and I was saying, you know, I know where I am. Everything is familiar. I know where I am. I read the signs and I know where I am. And I realized that a dyslexic child walks in the street. Everything is full of signs, the shop signs, the street signs. He doesn't know. He can't read it.
Nothing.
We cannot see all that. And we don't understand.
It's very, very painful, limiting yoke for a child to live with and grow up with.
Well, the thing, 50 years ahead, before he died, I had had an accident and Samuel was driving me to various x-rays and hospitals for treatments for my broken foot. And he was driving. We were in France. And we had to go through the motorway and get out of the motorway. And I'm reading the signs towards the hospital. And I read, and I can see. The first time in my life, his late life, I saw that when my eyes go to the signs, he goes to the GPS listening to where he tells it to go. The GPS tells him to turn left, he turns left. I can see it there. And I was saying, look, and I saw he wasn't looking at the signs.
You were complete abstracts to him. Complete abstracts.
How sad is that?
Very sad. Very sad.
But he made his way in life thanks to the computers. He did a job for somebody. He became an architect. He did some interior work for somebody who was so happy with the work. He gave him a computer as a present. We're waiting the time back in, he came to live in London later. And
he figured it out.
He figured it out.
Yeah. If you're talking about a design computer, or like architectural design programs.
Yes, there was a program called CAN, I think.
CAD, yeah.
Yeah, and he worked it out. He got the computer to talk to him. And he got to speak into the computer in order to get answers. And he made his name. He was a very successful man.
In the London area.
In the London area, yes. But he worked for somebody who had properties in France. And he gave him the job to go and do a survey on the properties and see what needs doing. And these were properties like big hangars where within them there are many shops inside. And he started to study French law. What's the obligation of the landlord and what's the obligation of the tenant? And he found out for his boss that he was not obligated to do for them as much as he was doing already for them, because that guy didn't know the law, because he was an Israeli Londoner who didn't know the French law. He studied the French law in order to tell him, listen, you have to do the roof and you have to do the passageway, but inside is their responsibility.
So it's like, despite the fact that he could not read all the way to his death, he found ways to accommodate.
Yeah, he did.
Beautiful.
This is the special talents that are given to the dyslexic people, that they can find it in themselves, that they have different talents to cope generally with life and also be very artistic, very creative.
So, Ginette, about 6 weeks ago, I stumbled into a research paper from a lady, Dr. Helen Taylor, a PhD researcher in Cambridge in England. And I stumbled into it because it was not directly dyslexia, otherwise I probably would have found it earlier, but she is actually an anthropological researcher and one that is seeking to understand the evolution, the ongoing development of societies and of human thinking. And she chose the dyslexic community as an example because she was aware of the fact that on the one hand, in neurology, it is seen as a neurological deficit. A deficit, something along the lines of you are deaf, you are blind, you are lame, you are dyslexic, like a deficit. But she was also very much aware of the fact, like your son Samuel, and like your husband, who became like a leading man in Sabena,
Yes,
the airline, Belgium airline, that they have tremendous gifts and talents. Sir Richard Branson is a famous example of an entrepreneur, 400 businesses, and as dyslexic as they come, if you can say it like that. And so Helen Taylor started to have suspicions, and she did meta-research, and she drew the conclusion and posted it to the scientific community, and that sadly takes time, and it's probably literally come to take a generation, if not more, before that reaches mainstream education and the mainstream thinking in society. But nevertheless, she coined the term explorative search. And so she said, like, this is not a neurological deficit. This is a neurological variance, simply a different brain. And you can make the difference visible in functional MRI. You can take a dyslexic child and make it visible right there and see the difference in neuropath excitements, like synapses taking place in a specific area, the auditory lobe, the visual cortex, and the junction with the temporal, parietal, and occipital lobe. And in that triangular area, you can see differences in brain activity when you take a dyslexic child as compared to a non-dyslexic child. And so she's arguing on the basis of factual research that we're not dealing here with a deficit, but we're dealing here with a variance.
Yeah.
And not just any variance, a very potent variance that society could tremendously benefit from as long as they stop thinking of it as a deficit.
Explorative search is the essence of humanity, a relentless quest to uncover hidden truth. It seeks the patterns others may miss, transforming complexity into clarity and finding remarkable solutions to the serious problems we face. This quality thrives in curiosity and courage, turning uncertainty into inspiration. Through explorative search, we innovate, we create, we dream, pushing the boundaries of possibility. Research evidences that individuals with dyslexia excel in this profound ability. They are not handicapped, but profoundly gifted, facing challenges in learning to read, yet shining brilliantly in their capacity to think differently.
You having seen Samuel find his way, even seeing your husband, although you were estranged from him, but still, following his career.
Yes.
What is your response to that thinking of Helen Taylor?
I'd like to meet this lady. I'd like to thank her. I think she's tremendous because, and I would like to say to anybody or everybody who knows or is dyslexic, please seek help. You are not deficient. You are just different. You are better than many.
I don't know why this beat through, but just go back to. But from I want to meet this lady.
If you want to meet this lady, I will find a way to writing to her after this meeting with yourself and you telling me about her. I will definitely just write to her and tell her that she has done an immense work in improving and validating the lives of so many people. Not just speaking of the dyslexic people themselves, but those around them, those of like parents who have initially condemned them. I was lucky, and maybe Samuel was lucky in that I loved him without any conditions. He didn't have to be first in his class for me to love him. I loved him. He didn't do homework. I loved him anyway. So he didn't grow with that kind of, his father didn't. His father punished him cruelly, but that's beside the point. But all dyslexic people to think of themselves of not necessarily better people, but different, with different gifts, and they can bring different contribution to their environment and to the society. They have to be seen as a contribution.
And society today very much needs that. Right? If we make a big jump back to an agricultural society, then life was pretty much the same for each and every generation.
Yes.
Now life is very different every 10 years, every 5 years. If you look at the explosion of artificial intelligence right now, that everything evolves extremely fast.
Yeah.
And so the explorative search, as Dr. Helen Taylor calls it, is a gift, is a talent that dyslexic children, dyslexic adults, once they're older, have to give to this world. They see solutions, they see associations, they see combinations, they see out of the box.
Yes.
They can combine things, they visualize and find pathways which others simply can't.
Yeah, exactly.
The most thinking is compartmentalized.
Yes.
Truly that.
Yes. Please don't look at yourself as a deficient person. You can do anything and everything you want, and you can do it your way. You can find a way, and you can do it.
So you were not aware of dyslexia. You couldn't name dyslexia in the situation that you experienced, the difference that you experienced with your firstborn, with Samuel. But your secondborn was not dyslexic. And your husband was dyslexic. You learned that, or you knew that fairly early on. He couldn't read.
Just really, I realized later on.
Later on, okay.
Yeah.
But we now know in science that there is a genetic link via chromosome.
Yes.
40% chance via the maternal line. 40% via the maternal line. 50% via the paternal line. But it can skip generations. It does not have to affect each and every child. It can suddenly come into a family when it was never there. So that aspect of where it comes from is still a bit of a mystery scientifically. But now when we go back to the boys growing up,
yes,
how did it affect their relationship, and even once they were adults and they joined you in England and their lives all the way to Samuel's death a few years ago, how did it affect the relationship between them?
Well, Rudy was a studious boy. He did his homework. He read, he could read, he wrote there was no problem. He was a very sensitive child. Rudy was a very sensitive child, such that when there was unrest in the home, he had to redouble a year because he just couldn't deal with it. But that was his sensitivity and his being hurt, him feeling probably not safe within the home because there was such discord between mom and dad. There was such ill treatment. I was so treated so badly by his father. He didn't condemn his father, but he was very sensitive, and that hurt him enormously. He witnessed his brother being ill-treated by his father because he wasn't doing well at school. He witnessed that. That hurt him. That hurt Rudy, seeing that. And he's a very sensitive man. He's a lovely guy.
So
they didn't get on, the brothers.
They did not get on?
No, they didn't get on.
But that was unrelated to the dyslexia?
I have no idea.
No idea.
I have no idea.
That can happen.
Yeah, they just didn't get on. And that's another... It pained me a lot to see them not getting on. But I didn't see that I could do anything. I don't love the one more than the other.
Of course not.
Same way. With the question mark of why.
Was it maybe the fact, on the one hand, the blessed lucky fact that Samuel did not get a label dyslexia on his forehead, but he was simply not functioning well in school. But then Rudy, as a sensitive person, sensitive young man, sensitive child, seeing the ill treatment of the father to Samuel and that paining him, and then seeing the tension in the house and the pain inflicted on you, paining him again. And so was it maybe that his emphatic qualities protected him from let's say the weaknesses of Samuel in school, so he had more compassion for Samuel than competition. Did the compassion in Rudy win it from the competition? So?
That is very possible. Yes, that is very possible. I didn't quite analyze that, at the time, but that is possible. Yeah.
And so the differences later on in life were simply because they had different interests. They went different ways.
They thought that they loved each other.
Yeah.
They did love each other, but they just didn't get on.
Yeah, went their ways.
Yeah.
Ginette, you mentioned boxes and people liking to put people in boxes. Can you talk about that?
People putting people in boxes. I think this is a rampant thing. I call it boxes. When somebody meets you, they immediately classify them inside their heads, whether they're nice, not very nice, intelligent, or ugly, or beautiful, or not quite so blonde, and they put them in cubby holes. And the first impression that you get of somebody makes you put the other person in that cubby hole. And it is very difficult afterwards for the person who has used the box, the cubby hole, to get that person out of that cubby hole and reclassify them. That means that you, as the cubby hole or the box, who is in the box, you have to work very hard to prove yourself different to the person who has classified you.
So this applies to a child with dyslexia as well. The parent boxes them in, the teacher boxes them in.
Yes, this is absolutely the case. I'm certain, because even we're all well-meaning parents. We love our children. We want the best for them, but we would like them to behave. We would like them to do things we ask them to do, and if they don't do them, they're not such a nice child. We punish them, and the punished child is punished for reasons he doesn't understand, because he's done something he cannot do, or he hasn't done something because he's been asked to do something he cannot do. He doesn't know how to do what he's asked to do, and he's punished for it, and he cannot understand why he's punished. And that begins to put him into the frustration of already a young child, into withdrawal, and sometimes, often, physical symptoms, physical illness. In the case of my child, Samuel, he developed skin problems. He was very young when suddenly his hands became scaly. I had no idea what it was. I thought he touched something, took him to the doctor. They gave me an ointment, and I had to bandage his hands for days on end. He couldn't do anything because he had bandaged hands. He was 7 by that time. And
you believe it was an expression of stress?
I think that was now I'm sure it was an expression of his stress, the stress that we were
putting on him
to do things he could not do, he couldn't understand.
Yeah. And then you have children, of course, who are of a different wiring, and they may push out, they may become recalcitrant or
withdrawn sometimes. Probably, possibly, Samuel was going to become aggressive. He was throwing things, he was breaking things on purpose. I remember once, it's so many years ago now, but I remember it, that he just kicked a pot. I put a pot with flowers on the balcony, and he just kicked it.
Yeah.
That means he intentionally broke it and destroyed the plant.
There's expressions of frustration on the inside. Yeah.
Absolutely. Which I didn't understand. I was young. I was ignorant of that type of thing. I was angry with him. I told him off for doing it. I remember, because I feel guilty about it, because I told him off. But I had no idea that I was putting him in a situation that he couldn't handle. I was sending him to a school where there was no understanding on the part of the teachers that this child, anybody could see that he was an intelligent, interesting boy, because he was all the time doing things. He was creative. Out of nothing, he made things. He made himself a bicycle.
But yet, academically, they boxed him in.
They told me that he's going to go to a different school for retarded children, which I rejected completely. I remember that day I took him home. He was probably 8 or 9 by then. I kind of hugged him, and I didn't know. I didn't know why he was refusing to do our work, refusing to get into the rails that normally every normal, to my mind and to his father's mind, normal person should go to school and read and write, and then get a career or get whatever. And he just wasn't going to follow that path. He was not there. He wasn't doing it. And I thought he couldn't. His father thought he wouldn't. The difference was that I didn't understand dyslexia. I did not know the word. But I saw that he couldn't. Because I was with him, because I loved him. And I saw the aspects of him which were admirable. He was finding 2 bits of wire, and he was making loudspeakers for the radio. You know, an Indian child is not going to do that. there is intelligence there, there is talent.
Yeah.
So, but his father was not that type of person, and he himself was dyslexic. It is possible that he saw that in his son, and he didn't want it in him. He didn't understand himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have punished him the way he did. He was very cruel, and it was a terrible period of Samuel's life. Not the same line, but no, Samuel's life.
Yesterday, as we were talking in preparation, you said something very fascinating. You said many fascinating things, but this was another fascinating one. You said the hands can do nothing without the brain, and you were referring to neurology. And you had an agenda with that statement. Can you expound on that?
It is an expression that people use. He's very good with his hands. He's very good with his hands. Can't do anything, but he's good with his hands. The hands are not separated from us. The brain dictates the movement of the hands. Everything that you do, I wouldn't lift this unless my brain tells it lift it or clap or do anything unless my thinking goes along that way. So the person who is good with his hands has got a brain who is good to tell these hands to do these things.
Right.
So that's where it comes from, not from the hands. The hands are the tools, but the initiator, the intelligence in the brain, in our minds, is what dictates what we do with them.
So what you're saying is somebody who is exceptionally gifted with their hands is apparently equipped with an exceptionally brilliant brain.
Yes, like carpenters.
Like carpenters, like excellent mechanics.
Yes.
Like artists.
Yes.
Yeah.
An artist who sees, what did Picasso do with something he made a goat? You know, it's the brain.
But that is a very significant observation. So that places a sort of a countercultural. We live in a very academic-oriented society.
Yeah.
Where every parent almost hopes that their children will go to university if they have the money, to an Ivy League university, and so forth. Yeah? And we are sort of looking down on the traits and whatnot, and you are saying they are just different expressions of intelligence.
Yes.
No.
I'm convinced that is the case.
Well, I'm convinced of it too.
Yeah.
Along these same lines, as I was flying over here to visit you, there was a gentleman on board the airplane, and he was wearing a T-shirt which said, "To live is to create." I've never seen a T-shirt like that, but flying towards you in this context, I found it a very special thing to see. And you also are very much into the arts. You make bronze art, and you weave. You're an artist who make beautiful work.
I'm a painter as well.
You're a painter as well. There you go. Yeah. What role does art and artistic expression and creativity play for the human soul? For a human being, for themselves, individually?
Enormous. I can encapsulate it that art is fundamental for the expression, understanding, and living with ourselves and the world the way it is. Art explains things that we haven't thought about, or we've thought about and we haven't found answers to, and we pass on because it's too troublesome to seek. answers to things that sometimes bother us. And art give those answers, because in a sculpture, a painting, you can say things, you can express things which are not necessarily a part of everyday life, because everyday life can be mundane and boring, but things that we don't stop to think about, but are there and sometimes bother us that we don't know. I've got one little example, if I may.
Please.
I exhibited, when I lived in London, I did an exhibition within the Kilburn Library. They invited me to put sculptures there outside the library and inside some sculptures. And I had a large sculpture that I had just finished, which is inspired by women in Cameroon, because I had been to Cameroon and I was impressed by their activities, their beauty. And this sculpture is called Madame Mba. And it is a large sculpture, 2 meters 40, standing up. And I lent them that sculpture for a few months to put in the entrance, the hall before the entrance to the library itself in Kilburn.
Mm-hmm.
And I left it there for a while, and then I went every now and then to see that it hasn't been damaged, because children go in and out, they come, school classes go, and I just see. And when I was told that I can take it home, because they were having another exhibition after a couple of months, the lady who was running that enterprise came up to me and said, "Listen, I wanted to tell you something. For the time that this sculpture has been here in the fall, I haven't had any rowdiness. The children come in, look, and then walk on quietly. I haven't had any rows or any disruption from children while this sculpture has been here." And this is a fact. This is...
Oh, I believe you. I believe you. I very much value the importance of creating an atmosphere that conduces healthy behavior.
Yes.
If a place is badly lit and dirty and ugly, then people very quickly throw their garbage on the streets and pay no attention if they damage something. If something is clean and quiet and beautiful, then that instills a different behavior.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I can very much see that. Very much see that.
This is what art does to people.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to in London again to a Picasso exhibition, and just stopping in front of very different. You know what Picasso painted, sometimes very
abstract. Mm-hmm.
Very abstract, very distorted, but you recognize the face in it. And sometimes you didn't. And we were standing in front of one of his paintings, and there was another guy standing there with us, and we were just looking at that painting. And this guy said, nobody asked him anything, he just said, "I don't know why I look at this, but I just love it. I don't know why. It just does something for me."
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. She just said it.
Yeah, art is very powerful.
Very powerful.
I always find it very interesting also that we remember the names of artists of the past.
Yes.
But we do not remember the mayor of Florence.
No.
Or the leading businessman of Florence.
No.
But we remember Michelangelo. Yeah.
Yes, we do.
In life, there is this strange tension between the relationship between pain and suffering and hardship, and beauty and quality and growth. We see it in nature. diamonds are created by the enormous pressure of the crust. You see it with a butterfly as it fights to come out of its cocoon, out of its chrysolite. The vessels supposedly strengthen their wings, which is very important. We see that in a human body, if we don't exercise our muscles, they atrophy and get weak. And yet exercising, the expression "no pain, no gain," you need to exercise to the point that you feel that you're basically suffering a little bit before you get there and grow. So you're now 91 years old and still thinking sharp as a razor and running me around through the beautiful Provence, for which I'm very grateful. But you have seen a lot. We've talked a lot about many things. You've been in a very difficult marriage, your first marriage. You grew up under Nazism, and you came under communism, and you came into a young state of Israel. And you recently lost your firstborn son. You have seen him wrestle with dyslexia, which was painful for you as a mother when you did not understand what it was and how the surroundings reacted to him. You're a Jewish lady. If there's any people group in this world that would be allowed to claim a claim on suffering, then it sadly is your people. There have been pogroms endlessly, and the anti-Semitism is very tragically coming back to the surface despite Auschwitz and despite people who should remember Holocaust and have forgotten Holocaust. You have lost family members, friends of your own husband lost his entire family in something that is incomprehensible. Industrial destruction of entire people groups. So suffering is extremely familiar to you. What role does suffering play in life for you, in your ears, in your heart?
It's a very complex question because life is made of many layers. There are many, many aspects that we live. Suffering when it comes so painfully close, like the death of a child, it puts the other causes of suffering further back. I have come to terms with everything that has happened in my life. As you said, difficult beginnings with Nazi anti-Semitism and then communism and then immigration, then difficult. That is not only for me, for generally for people, suffering is like a daily thing. Everybody goes through difficult times in their lives. And I think we have something in us which accommodates suffering. We learn to live with the bruises. Some bruises never heal. Some bruises heal. The bruise caused to me by the death of my son is never going to leave me. And it is now 5 years since his death. I haven't healed, but I think I'm beginning to get, I don't want to get accustomed now, I'll never get accustomed, but to accept the fact that he's gone. And there is probably the creative side of me which pushes me to carry on living, not as a broken person, which I am. Somewhere inside, I am very broken. But I also have that appreciation of daily life. I appreciate the day, the sunrise. I appreciate the flowers in the garden. I appreciate a tasty meal, good company. But the bruises and the pain are there.
But I have experienced you, come to know you now. We know each other now 3 years. I've come to know you as a very altruistic, very generous, very loving, very patient person. If the whole world would be filled with Ginettes, it would be a beautiful place.
Thank you. That's very kind.
When I go and look at the Jewish people as a people group, I can almost say the same thing. If we look at their contribution to science, it is out of proportion the amount of Nobel Prize winners from the Jewish world,
Sure, that's true.
as compared to all of the other racial groups in this world. If you would keep track and statistics on philanthropy, and you would segregate that by people groups, then you will discover that the Jewish community outperforms every other racial group in terms of philanthropy. Then it's a very philanthropical community, culture. When we look at the ability after the Holocaust to build an entire society out of the ashes of Auschwitz, it is incomprehensible that strength, that hunger for life and for beauty and for community and for creativity and for rebuilding, starting all over again, not giving up, is there. And just as you individually have suffered so much, the people group, Jewish people group, as a racial group over the centuries has suffered so much. And so my question to you is, again, I understand your expression, your brokenness, and I can see it when you talk about it. And we've had many conversations so far. I can see it in your house with the memories, and I can see it in your art and in your sculptures. But yet there is this beauty. Where did you get that beauty? Where did you get that zest for life? Where did you get that altruism? Do you see a connection?
I don't think I know where I get it from. It's inside of me. I get, I was a sculptor. I was actively sculpting and painting for many years. When my son died, I was unable to do anything. But 2 years afterwards, I felt the need to create again. But I couldn't go back to what I was doing before because I wasn't the same person in some ways. But in some ways I was, because I had this urge, this push from inside to do something creative. And this is when I thought I always was fascinating by weaving. So this will be something new to create, not going back to what I was creating before, So I got a loom and I started weaving, which is a fascinating occupation, fascinating thing to do. Out of some threads, you create a cloth, which is you can give a lot of beauty to. And this is in me. I don't. This is something that I've come to think about, to bear grudge, because there are other things that have hurt me, which have implicated other people. to bear a grudge to those other people, to bear a grudge to that event or whatever it was that hurt me, is totally futile, because grudge or hatred or resentment is a negative feeling, and the person it hurts most of all is the bearer. It would hurt me more than it would hurt those that I bear a grudge against.
Like a toxin.
Like a toxin. It's toxic. I felt it was going to be toxic to me, because I couldn't be a toxic to those people who hurt me, because I'm not that. I can't do it. I can't lift my hand and hit, unless in self-defense. That's another story. But I can't bear grudge. So I decided, that's a decision taken some years ago, that I don't bear a grudge. Maybe I forgive. I don't forget, but I forgive, and I carry on. I remain who I am. The elements of nastiness personally to me and to my group that has been inflicted on us stays there. But they have not succeeded in altering me. On the contrary, they've made me a better person.
It climbs you
I
up.
think.
Yeah.
Because I've decided that I'm not going to go to that level to be like them and hate and give nastiness for nastiness. It's not who I am.
The more nastiness experienced, the more you hunger for love.
Absolutely.
The more pain experienced, the more you hunger to bring life.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely. That is
Beautiful.
what I.
We talked about the role of suffering. We talked about society and boxes. We talked about Dr. Helen Taylor's beautiful work on explorative search, which work is attempting to move dyslexia out of the realm of neurological deficit into the realm of neurological variance, with its fully legitimate place and strength and essential contribution to society. So in closing, at the end of this interview, what would you like to say to parents of a young child who struggles with reading?
Love this child. Accept it as it is, boy or girl, and seek help. Because this child who has got some variant within their brain structure has got a compensatory well of gifts, of talent, which really are there and have to be unlocked by allowing the child to develop and believe in itself that it is not different in any negative way. It is just slightly different than others, but in many ways better than others. So give that child a chance and don't get into the groove of feeling guilty because it's not your fault, or feeling responsible because it's not your responsibility, but it is your responsibility, and it is your absolute task as a parent to seek help for that child, to have it tested, to decide as early as possible to see what degree they have of dyslexia and how it can be helped, and mainly follow it up. Just follow it up. Could I go back and just make a point a little bit more with emphasis, because I don't know that I've said it strongly enough, that a dyslexic child cannot read, period. He sees little squiggles. He doesn't see letters. He doesn't, but he can be helped to read. But reading is not the only thing, because my son, without reading, without help from anybody, became an interior designer, engineer, architect par excellence. That was in him. He was talented, and that just came out through circumstances that was, in a sense, I created some of them, but it was himself. But you have had experience with children more than I've only had my son. You've had experience with other children through Dinery. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
You're reversing the roles. You're talking me into the
Yes,
role when it comes to the you surprised me. But not the first time. I oftentimes say to parents, like, you need to realize that the child is suffering, the child is being confused, that the child doesn't understand. With a perfectly brilliant brain, it doesn't understand why other children in the class learn to read, why siblings sometimes learn to read, why a younger sibling, 2 years younger, 3 years younger, because typically we discover them at age 9.5. It has gone up a bit because of the COVID measures in schooling. But like 9.5 is typically when the alarm bells go off. And they can have siblings of 3 years younger that can read, and that is an extremely painful thing. And yet, as you said, they have that, as Dr. Helen Taylor said, the explorative search ability. They are able to lay combinations. We talked about when we were on the phone with your other son, Rudy. We talked about a knife. It's just a piece of a knife, but a dyslexic sees that it's a screwdriver as well, if you happen to need it.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's many other things. You can make a bicycle with it.
Yes.
If that's something else, a part of a bicycle. If you know how to weld, etc. And so they are very talented, very gifted. We live in a society in which those talents are very much needed. We live in a society that needs answers for a lot of significant problems and challenges, and so that the dyslexic brain is a tremendous asset. But if the child collapses under the internal pain and turmoil, and even if we help the child to come to learn to read, then even a child 9.5 starting to learn to read with the best of programs still has a path to follow daily, diligently, for 18 months to get to that point that they can actually read. And that requires energy, and that requires inner motivation, that requires inner strength. And where does that come from when the child is already so much hurt and pain? And so one of the biggest gifts that you can give a child, your child, when it is dyslexic, is to help them to discover their explorative search talents. If the child is a brilliant drawer, let them draw. Buying pencils, it's the cheapest hobby in the world. And let them explore that, and not only for themselves, but suggest, facilitate, create the opportunity that they draw their grandmother, that they draw the neighbor's dog, so that they get applause from other people.
Yes.
That they start to discover, I'm of value.
I'm worth it. I'm worth something. I'm worth something.
I can do something.
Yes.
Sorry for the emotion, but I've used these expressions so many times.
Yes.
These experiences so many times. The other child may be a terrific gardener. Let them garden.
Yeah.
And let them grow their tomatoes, what it is, and let them share it with the neighbors. And nowadays they're like, oh, what a delicious tomatoes. And the child grows up on the inside, heals up on the inside. If they're brilliant in technical stuff.
You buy them a little kit, and you can see that in no time they've built something that isn't even in the picture.
We had a child, for you mentioned retarded school, an old-fashioned word, but there was a child that we helped from Wyoming, and I will never forget this. And that child was already 14 years old when his parents finally found help, and they started working with our program. And I was mesmerized by it because I thought, like, how can a child survive that long? And the parents had shared that they had put him in a class for mentally retarded children or mentally challenged children. And that is such cruelty and so unjustified. There's nothing wrong with that child at all. He just couldn't read. But then they shared, and kudos to those parents. They allowed him to take his technical skills, and down the street was this garage repair shop. And for already when he was 10 years old, he started to help out there. And by the time that I met his parents, he was already a fully appreciated mechanic in that car repair shop, doing work, just adult work, excellent work. And that's straight into what?
That just buried in him.
That was
All this talent.
all the talents there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you give them, you buy some piece of furniture and it comes in a flat pack with a drawing and explanation how to build it. They don't need that.
Yeah.
They will build it.
They see it.
That Samuel was doing that. He was building
They
it.
just see it.
Or else you can give them music.
Yeah.
Give them music. They can be musical.
And
Singing. Anything.
you can even share your challenges in the family with them.
Yeah.
Well, how are we going to solve this? How are we going to solve
Yes.
that? And you will be surprised.
Touching.
You will be surprised at the answers that they come up with.
Yes.
Beautiful.
So as the final note, thank you. Thank you in the name of every child that needs help.
Thank you for this very special time together and for your advocacy for these children. Thank you.
At Dynaread, we lovingly provide online testing and remediation for children with dyslexia. Since 2006, our unique remediation program has been tenderly crafted to support children with severe dyslexia, offering them hope, confidence, and the joy of reading.
The dyslexia testing and remediation services of Dynaread are deeply rooted in the pioneering work of distinguished scientists. Their groundbreaking research has shaped our testing methods, unique reading remediation programs, and overall understanding of this extraordinary neurological variance. Their insights illuminate the profound strengths and challenges of individuals with dyslexia.
For several years now, Dynaread has been privileged to honor Miss Ginette Ashkenazy, whose remarkable empathy, boundless love, and deep compassion have touched the lives of countless children with dyslexia. In a heartfelt tribute, Dynaread lovingly dedicates its service to the cherished memory of her son, Samuel Baumgard.
השמיים והארץ על ידי